Welcome everyone to Things Around 8. Dear friends, in this video we will talk about Vladimir Putin's plan to arm the adversaries of the United States, a kind of Russian revenge for what the Allies are doing in Ukraine. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and click on the notification bell so you don't miss any news. Since the beginning of human history, peoples, kingdoms, empires and countries have fought each other for dominance and control over important wealth and resources. And this fight has often been direct, with both forces, sometimes accompanied by allies, facing each other directly on the battlefield. But there is also a different type of combat, an indirect way for great powers to face each other, a type of confrontation known as proxy war. Through proxy wars, two or more kingdoms could fight without the risk of this fight escalating and turning into a direct war between great and powerful powers. History is replete with cases of proxy wars, such as during the Byzantine Empire, the successor to the Roman Empire, which, between the 5th and 15th centuries, specialized in fomenting and financing wars between rival powers, aiming to weaken them so that they could be more easily subjugated. England and France, who were great rivals for centuries, also faced each other many times in proxy wars, such as during the American Revolution between 1765 and 1783, with France financing and arming the American rebels in their fight for independence against England. And the 20th century, after the end of World War II and the beginning of the Cold War, was also a period very rich in proxy wars, with the Western Bloc, led by the United States and with important allies in Western Europe, facing the Eastern Bloc, led by Soviet Russia and Communist China, resulting in highly lethal and costly proxy wars, such as the Korean War in the 1950s, the Vietnam War between the 1960s and 1970s, and the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 1980s. In each of these conflicts, the United States, the Soviet Union, and China faced each other indirectly on the battlefield, all with the purpose of causing damage to the adversary, but without the risk of directly engaging in a conflict that could easily escalate into a nuclear war. And now, in the 21st century, it could not be any different, with proxy wars still being a resource widely employed by the major powers, with the greatest example of this occurring right now in Ukraine. A comparison between the military capabilities of Russia and Ukraine would allow us to predict, in any scenario, a quick and crushing Russian victory. At best, Ukraine would be able to hold off the Russian advance in one or two sectors for a few weeks. But in a one-on-one situation, Ukraine's defeat by the mighty Russia would be inevitable. However, today, 2 years and 3 months later, Ukraine is still alive and well in the conflict, having even liberated tens of thousands of kilometers of areas that were under Russian occupation. Currently, Ukraine is waging a war of attrition that is tremendously costly for both sides, frustrating Putin's plans to annex and assimilate new territories for Russia, with Ukraine achieving this solely thanks to the proxy war between the United States, NATO, and Russia. The alliance and the United States deny that what is happening in Ukraine is a proxy war, claiming that what is happening there is simply a collective effort to ensure the defense of a nation under attack. However, it is clearly obvious that this is a proxy war identical to what happened in Korea, Vietnam, and Afghanistan. Through Ukraine, the United States and some NATO members are deeply wearing down Russia, forcing Putin to spend precious human and material resources there that could otherwise be used against Western interests elsewhere in the world. Putin obviously knows this and is feeling firsthand the effects of all this Western support for Ukraine, leading him to say on June 5 that he feels free to do the same, that is, that Russia could supply weapons to the natural adversaries of the United States and other countries that directly support Ukraine. Putin did not give any details about his plan, but he hints that Russia could arm countries like Venezuela, Iran, Syria and North Korea with long-range weapons that these countries do not operate so that they can be used against Western interests. In the case of Venezuela, led by dictator Nicolas Maduro, the target would be the small Guyana, a country that Maduro wants to invade in order to annex 70% of the territory rich in gold mines and mainly oil and natural gas, since the United States has guaranteed that it would act directly to protect the sovereignty of Guyana. Supplying Russian weapons to Venezuela to attack would force the United States to divert military resources to South America. In the case of Iran and Syria, the target would be Israel, an important ally of the United States. And in the case of North Korea, the targets would be South Korea and Japan. However, there are doubts about Russia's ability to do this, since, as we know, all the most advanced Russian weapons are being used precisely against the Western weapons that Ukraine has been receiving since the beginning of the invasion. This means that there is very little left for Russia to spare in shipments to other countries. And in fact, what we are seeing is exactly the opposite, with countries like Iran and North Korea supplying weapons so that Russia can maintain the pace and pressure of its invasion. This shows that it would be very difficult for Russia to supply quantities of hypersonic or very long-range missiles to the adversaries and natural enemies of the United States and NATO members who are sending weapons to Ukraine simply because Russia does not currently have a surplus of these weapons in its stockpiles. With the analysis of the wreckage found in Ukraine showing that many of the most advanced and long-range Russian missiles launched against the country were produced in the last 4 or 5 weeks. In other words, the pace of the invasion is so strong and intense that Russia is forced to produce today what it will launch tomorrow. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any news.